day everyone, this is Nemesis and today I'm releasing the updated version for the Necromancer SPvP build, the Frozen Ravager. So in this video we are going to go through a build overview, then the weapons and utilities, then we will move on to selecting our traits, and while we're at it we are going to take an in-depth look into the Guild Wars 2 SPvP system. After that we can safely make the last finishing touches by selecting our Amulet, runes and Sigils. Then it's time to sit back and do a recap to see the finished product. And last but definitely not least, we are going to take an in-depth look at the Executioner's damage rotation and playstyle. That's going to be a little bit more complicated. Fear not, since this is a step-by-step configuration, by the end of the video you will see how everything will make perfect sense and you will be able to more or less replicate what you have seen in the beginning of this video. However, before we begin, just some quick notes. First, I always recommend that players make their own builds before reaching out to me, since it's not only part of the fun, but it's also a very good way to truly master a class. Secondly, I feel that it is needed to specify that my builds are never designed for maximum effectiveness when in combination with any forms of exploiting or the abuse of bad gameplay design. So, the build overview. In order to better understand a certain build or playstyle, I feel that it's required to have a structured classification beforehand. For example, in Guild Wars 2, every single build will always use at least one of these three stats, either power, condition damage or healing, as its primary active stat, also known as skill modifier, to scale up the build skills. In the Executioner's case, it will scale off of power, and it will strive to fulfill one of the three roles that one can undertake in PvP: bunker, DPS or support. And as a support, the categories you may choose to specialize in are buffing, healing or debuffing. So when we draw the line, the Executioner is a power type support build which specializes in debuffing. And of course, just like any other build, it has some pros and some cons. Under advantages, I will mention that the build has maximum single target boon removal, perma chill plus very high CCing potential, and last but definitely not least, the ability to survive focus fire and stun lock. On top of all of that, it also has very high single target burst, which makes it excellent at finishing players off. Overall, I have designed this build to make you an amazing initiator, team fighter and executioner. The downside is, it's a little bit vulnerable to condition damage, has low mobility, low sustained damage and no disengage, which makes it an overall horrible duelist and roamer. Therefore, in order to maximize your effectiveness while playing this build, it is recommended to work in synergy with really high bursters that also have sustained damage, such as Glass Cannon Necromancers or Shatter Mesmers and so on. Before we move on to selecting our weapons, it's important to always take into account two of the principles of build creation that I always go by. Never invest in anything you don't use, and never take an advantage for yourself at the cost of your team's disadvantage. So, for our first power type weapon, we have to decide between the axe and the dagger. In this build I went for the dagger in order to gain access to the 4-second Immobilize from Dark Pact, which if you use it at the right time you can prevent the target from disengaging. So you see, we're already taking our first step on the path of becoming a debuffer. We also have Life Siphon, which heals for about 300 even if the damage is being negated. Not really that useful in this build, but it does add a little bit to the overall sustain. And last but not least, we have Dagger 1, which is a very fast 3-chain attack, something to remember for later, that also cleaves and provides the user with life force, which as we know powers up the Necromancer Death Shroud mechanic. Now for the offhand weapon, here we have to choose between Dagger, Warhorn or Focus. Dagger, transfer condition and bleeding. Nope. Warhorn, cone-shaped daze and enhanced mobility. This is actually not bad, but you remember we are going for max boon removal, and there is also a very good reason why we can't use the Warhorn in this build. So I will opt to go for the Focus, since it gives me further access to Life Force plus regeneration while debuffing the enemy with vulnerability, and gives me access to my first Chill, also very strong boon removal. Now, Chill, in my opinion, is the strongest debuff in the game at the moment. Mind you, I say debuff, not CC. While a target is chilled, not only does he move 66% slower, that automatically means it's harder for him to engage or disengage, but also all skill cooldowns recharge 66% slower as well, which translates into 66% less frequent bursts, less frequent invulnerabilities, less frequent everything. It basically reduces the enemy's effectiveness almost in half. It is amazing, as long as you manage to make it stick to a target, because we know most players just shake it off. But we will get to that later. For our secondary weapon set, I opted to go for the Staff, since it provides the most synergy with Dagger Focus in this playstyle. We have Chill Blades, our second Chill, which goes really well with the ones from Spinal Shivers. We have Mark of Blood, which can actually give you perma regeneration and goes well with what we get from Reaper's Touch on top of Life Siphon. Here we also have our first CC from Reaper's Mark, and a little bit of defense versus conditions from Putrid Mark, which is also a possible extra way to debuff the enemy with chill and vulnerability and all that good stuff. Okay, moving on to our slot skills. Our healing spell is without a doubt Consume Conditions. It removes all conditions on self and heals extra based on conditions removed. There is absolutely no better choice in this playstyle. Our first utility skill is Spectral Grasp. It's our second CC, third or fourth chill, depending on how you're counting, and third way of obtaining life force. It's also a very good way to initiate, since as we know in structured PvP it's all about positioning, and having the ability to mess up someone's positioning can really turn the course of a fight. Second utility skill is Corrupt Boon. Convert 5 boons on the target into negative conditions. It's not just a boon removal. Used at the right time, it can be turned into a third CC, since it can transform stability into fear. The third utility slot is the only one not set in stone. It can be filled with either Well of Power for more defense versus conditions, or Spectral Armor for more defense versus bursters, or even Spectral Wall for a possible extra CC. I personally run with Spectral Walk for a little bit more mobility, but in reality it all depends on your team's composition. As for the elite skill, I use Plague. Pum pum pum. Because of its stacking stability, outrageous health and AoE blind spam from Plague of Darkness, it is the ultimate survive, focus, fire and debuffing spell. Now, it's time to go over the traits to find ways to further improve the effectiveness of our desired playstyle. There are 5, soon to be 6 core specializations to choose from, and you can have 3 of them active at the same time. It may seem overwhelming, especially if you're a new player, but luckily for us, we have already established our desired playstyle in the build overview. So there is a structure to follow when making all these decisions. Power type support specialized in debuffing. So the vulnerability on target we get from Reaper's Touch synergizes really well with Death's Embrace from Spite, which as you can see adds further vulnerability to targets below 33% health, in addition to giving you 25% increased damage while in down state. And of course there's always Putrid Mark and Corrupt Boon, but those are more situational. Yet Chill remains the most important debuff. So far we have our first chill from Spectral Grasp, second chill comes via conversion by using Corrupt Boon on a target with resistance, third is from Dark Path, fourth comes via transfer with Putrid Mark, The fifth one comes from Chillblains, and number 6 and 7 come from Spinal Shivers, and another Spinal Shivers that you get for free on targets under 50% health because of Chill of Death. All we are missing now to be able to get that famed perma chill is some chill duration, but we'll get to that soon enough when we will discuss the runes. Now, as a debuffer, you should also have the ability to remove, or even worse, convert your target's buffs. And on that front, we already have Convert 5 boons unblockable on a 40-second cooldown with Corrupt Boon, and a possible second Convert 5 boons AoE unblockable also on a 40-second cooldown with Well of Corruption. But we also have the two Remove 3 boons from Spinal Shivers and Chill of Death, whose scaling damage factor can crit, and these spells also benefit from the cooldown reduction from Spiteful Talisman, which puts both of them on a very low cooldown of 16 seconds. Now, when you put everything together, you now have all the tools required to make your enemy have a very hard time staying buffed. We are pretty much done with the debuffing part. So where were we? Spiteful Talisman. Time to focus on that Executioner's damage you saw in the beginning of the video. 5% extra damage on foes with no boons. Check. See, things are starting to come together. Another 5% more damage while your life force is over 50% with Strength of Undeath. Just remember to get some life force generation. And another 20% extra damage versus targets under 50% health with Close to Death. So far that puts us in total at around 30% extra damage versus targets under 50% health. But there's still more we can do. We debuff the enemy, now it's time to buff ourselves. As long as you use Life Blast as your power type attack of choice, you will gain 1 stack of might with a 15-second duration from Reaper's Might, combined with 2 stacks of might with a 10-second duration that you get when hitting targets under 50% health from Siphon Power. See, we are already getting some subtle hints on how the damage rotation and playstyle will look like in this build. You can obtain even more power based on your toughness from Deadly Strength. Just remember to get some toughness. Okay, now we have reached a major turning point in this build. From here we could proceed to add even more damage and thus becoming a glass cannon, or we could focus on having the ability to survive Focus Fire and Stun Lock, which a support build should have in the first place. You're really not much of a debuffer if you die before you actually get to apply your debuffs. There never was and never will be such a thing as a glass debuffer. Well, you could make one, but it's not exactly viable. So, this is where we are going to have the PvP talk, so you guys can better understand how this build got born in the first place. Okay? Okay. If, let's say for example, you take the Berserker Amulet, you can easily get to 200% critical strike damage and 40% critical strike chance, that being boosted to 90% critical strike chance while in Dash Out with the aid of Death Perception. Now, here is the number one mistake that people make, and I hear this all the time. Oh man, I'm going to do this to the enemy and that to the enemy, and I will Life Blast and Leech Form and crush everyone. And I'm just standing there going, no you're not. People are under the impression that they can just go in PvP and start spamming endless Life Blasts, as if the enemy is just going to sit there and let you do that. Most of the players don't take into consideration the reaction of their opponents, regardless of the game. In reality, people are not as stupid as the AI in this game, and they actually fight back. They will try to prey on your weakness, to counter you. And up until recently, the Necromancer was in a really bad spot PvP-wise. I even did a video in which I explained in great detail the fundamental flaws and shortcomings of the class. Low mobility, no disengage, no scaling defense, or the ability to survive Focus Fire and Stun Lock. So if you guys want to learn something about the class weaknesses while having the pleasure to see me getting zerged and ping-ponged around in 100 ranked games, feel free to check out this video right here. Now, even though ArenaNet has done some major improvements on the class since then, it is still lacking in the disengage and invulnerabilities department. And since tanky SPvP condition builds will not be fully viable until the expansion hits, the Necromancer still remained the #1 priority target in a teamfight. Being focus fired is known to be the ultimate Necromancer counter. In other words, they will zerg you so hard that sometimes you won't even get a chance to do a single life blast before you get splattered. And honestly, you can't really blame them considering just how hard the glass cannon hits. So with that in mind, we have to make a build which counters that. We will counter their counter. Don't get me wrong, the glass cannon Necromancer still has its uses. If you manage to protect him, and especially if a target is prepared beforehand, you can really stack them corpses high, like 300 style. In conclusion, I have designed this build not just as a solution to "Look, it's the Nemesis, get him!" but also as an initiator to the glass cannon. It's the yin to the yang, if you will. So, how are we able to survive focus fire and stun lock to counter the current kill the Necromancer first meta, and at the same time still be able to do the damage you guys seen in the beginning of this video? Well, the Necromancer has a natural high HP pool, but when you're getting focus fire by multiple targets and you have 1900 armor, you're literally asking for it. So that means toughness. So we go ahead and take the Cavalier Amulet, and we now have over 3000 armor and 209 critical strike damage. Also, if you remember, high toughness is quite good in combination with deathly strength. So back to the traits, since as I recall we still need to get some life force generation, not just for surviving focus fire and stun lock, but also for our damage, right? Right. Life force generation, and since we use 2 spectral skills, it's obvious that we'll make them recharge 20% faster, last 50% longer, and grant life force on use with spectral mastery. Also, life force gained from skills is increased by 10% with gluttony, and from kills by 20% with soul comprehension. Life force acts as a second life bar. Therefore, just like vitality, it improves your defense both against power type attack and condition type attacks. So now it's time to Anyway, versus direct type damage, it's the natural high HP pool plus Death Shroud plus high toughness, even more toughness while in Death Shroud from Armor Shroud, and protection when you leave Death Shroud thanks to Beyond the Veil, or when you fall below 50% HP from Spectral Armor. Versus condition damage, it's the natural high HP pool once again, plus Death Shroud, plus Consume Condition and Putrid Mark, plus Shroud Removal. So you see guys, the Necromancer class was designed to survive focus fire with raw stats and scaling defense rather than invulnerability effects. And the Death Shroud mechanic plays a crucial part in this. So getting focus fired at the wrong time, let's say when you're locked out of Death Shroud because of its 10-second cooldown, can prove fatal. So for that we have Unholy Sanctuary. Now you can use your life force to soak up a lot of incoming damage, then go into full HP Plague form, and we have to remember that Plague form takes advantage of your toughness and any additional buffs and all life force generation spells. So you can actually build your life force back up while you stay in Plague. Then, when your HP pool gets depleted, you will instantly and automatically be put back into Death Shroud. In conclusion, there is absolutely no way that you will ever be bursted down while you are at full strength. Now, you are significantly more tanky than before, but you're still vulnerable to being stun locked. So far we have 2 stun breakers on a high cooldown, so not likely going to use them twice in the same fight, And when you take into consideration that you can be focus fired by 3 or more players, and every single one of them could have 2 CCs at their disposal, doesn't look good. It may take them a little longer to kill you, but they will still do it if they manage to pin you down. Guild Wars 2 doesn't have a passive diminishing return effect, which means you could potentially be stunned over and over and over and over again. Unless you have 3-stack stability with a stun breaker from Foot in the Grave on a 7-second cooldown from Speed of Shadows. This would be perfect, but there is something still not right. You got the ferocity as in critical strike damage, but we don't have the precision as in critical strike chance. Does that mean all those damage modifiers, vulnerability and might were for nothing? How am I doing all that amazing damage? This is my favorite part. Les pièces du résistance, if you will. Sigil of Intelligence. 3 guaranteed 200% critical strike damage life blast hits under the protection of stability right after you just escaped stun and immobilize. More. Done at a 50% faster rate from Sigil of Rage. Like I promised, we are going to counter their counter. The last thing we need is some chill duration and we're done. Rune of Ice gives you an extra 30% chill duration, which makes all of our chills last for about 6 seconds. And considering we have 8 ways of applying chill to a target, it's more than enough to go through any and all conditional removals and maintain that feebled perma chill. Rune of Ice also adds another 7% extra damage versus shield foes, which further increases our executioner's damage. So now that the thought process behind the making of this build has been explained in great detail, you see how every trait, every spell, every sigil, every single piece of armor has been carefully selected for a very specific task. When all pieces of the puzzle come together, we now have the executioner build in its final form. Perfect. Now, you need to know how to play it. The first thing you need to remember is that you are playing a support build. Because your damage is tied to the Sigil of Intelligence, it is not sustainable. Therefore, you should use it when the circumstances favor you the most, on targets with low HP. That's when you get to benefit from all those damage modifiers, so you can reach hits of over 9,000. So don't go Rambo on people, because you will just pew them with 1k life blasts and they will eventually wear you down. Even if you can kill some glass cannons in 1v1s, it's still a waste of your time. This build was designed to shine in team fights, not duels or roaming or bunkering. You have to play to your strengths. So if you ever get intercepted, just shield the target a few times to make their mobility worse than yours and just walk away. Because somewhere, someone is in need of your assistance. Your objective on the map is to protect the high DPSers and also prepare targets for killing. Whenever you're not protecting your carry, especially one which also lacks disengage but synergizes really well with you because of the extra boon removal, like a glass cannon Necromancer, you should assume him dead by default, not because he's a bad player. On the contrary, I have absolute faith in my friend Batrish. The things we did together in PvP were amazing, and I am confident he can win at least 70% of all duels. But in structured PvP, it's not about duels, it's about winning. And you guys already seen what one glass cannon can do to the other glass cannon. Now imagine what happens when the enemy team sees him without support, because everyone knows by now to focus fire the Necro first. He'll get evaporated. So, first thing you do is draw as much attention to yourself as possible. Basically, you charge the enemy team, just like Aragorn charged the orcs at the gates of Mordor. You have to bait the enemy, which shouldn't be too hard considering people will go for you immediately anyway. Now, because there is like a 99.9% chance they will not be able to burst you down, you have not only bought time for your team to do some free DPS, since the enemy team just wasted most of their cooldowns on you, but you are also free to take your time and make tactical decisions. It's all about smart play. The reason why I said in the beginning the damage rotation and playstyle is a bit more complicated is because there is no damage rotation. In this build, it's all about being reactive. It's all about countering your opponents at the right time to turn the tide of a battle. So, since your damage doesn't shine unless you use it to execute people, in addition to tanking for your team, you must also take this time to prepare targets for killing. Basically, you separate an enemy from his team with Spectral Grasp, you apply as much chill as necessary until it sticks to lower that player's overall effectiveness, and if he is abundant in boons, you remove some of those boons with Spinal Shivers. Now, once the target that is being focus fire drops down to under 50% health and you automatically trigger the second Spinal Shivers, this is when most players usually try to make a recovery or to disengage. So, if the target has healed during this time, you quickly do a weapon swap into Death Shroud 1 spam, followed by some CCs if necessary, and it should be over. If the target has not healed during this time, there is a good chance they will try to do so now under the cover of stability, so he doesn't get interrupted. So keep your finger on that crab boon to interrupt. And then you proceed to continuously CC the target and let your team finish him off. Damn, that sounded wrong. Or you can do weapon swap into Death Shroud 1 spam to execute. And of course, if he tries to disengage, you immobilize, or you can even pull him back with Spectral Grasp. Once the target is downed, as the support with access to 3 seconds of stability every 7 seconds, it becomes part of your job to stomp people in teamfights. Every single second in which a high DPSer does not do high DPS in a teamfight because he has to stomp someone is a second wasted. Following these easy steps, whenever I had a good game, that meant 14, 15, 16 kills, and that was before the patch. After the patch, 24 kills. I could also 2-man their lord faster than they can even react. Bunker guardians drop like flies, warrior bunkers could not escape, even bunker engineers went down. And some of you probably remember the 2v4 highlight that I did with Batrash in my last guide. Well, we did another one, and it's even more epic.
The chieftain has returned. The keep is yours.
So this concludes the guide for the Necromancer executioner playstyle. It was a lot of hard work, but I'm pleased with the results. Turned out pretty good. I think this one took about 2 weeks in total to make, since I had to sort through about 88 ranked games, which is like 12 hours of footage. And as always, I wanted to make it more comprehensive, more structured, to compress even more information into an overall shorter guide, just by using clever wordplay. I never stopped improving on the quality of my guides, despite the fact that if this video is going to eventually make me only like 60,000 views, considering how much time and effort goes into it, not going to have a very good month. These kind of in-depth gaming guides are simply not viable on YouTube. That's why no one does it. So now I'm either forced to create a lot of filler content to compensate, which may not seem like filler content to you guys, or put my guides under a paywall, or accept deals with gold sellers, or reduce the quality of my work just so I can produce it faster. But then again, if I'm going to compromise, might as well just go for the pattern and start doing Flappy Bird or Minecraft videos. But I'm not quite ready to do that yet. That is why I turned towards crowdfunding. You see, I came back to YouTube with the intention of making something special. It's not just about guide making anymore. I wanted to expand for quite a while now, and perhaps even start my own company. But of course for that I need to hire more people, buy more equipment and so on. If you want to hear the full story, you can check out this video right here. So for those of you who want to help me return full-time to YouTube and continue making this type of content, and in time even make my project, the Legion Network, a reality, you can find the link to my Patreon page in the description of this video. There you will also find a menu for easy browsing, the link to the build editor, links to other similar builds for other classes, and hints to upcoming projects. You can also follow my Facebook page to keep in touch with any and all announcements that I have to make. I will also do a PvP mini-series with tips and highlights I had while playing this build, as it would be a shame if all that footage goes to waste. Besides, a lot of people told me that they would like to see more of my gameplay, so... And next week, hopefully, I will have the time to release the new hybrid build for the Necromancer, since the build has been done for quite a while now, and I have more than enough footage for it. But until next time, enjoy your gaming and have a great day.